Hi there. You're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Adam, did I just catch there that you were waiting for Tom, who is not currently here today, to chime in before you chimed in?
No, definitely not. It was just a pause for effect, George. So as your performance intuition may say that you're picking up on perhaps my weird memory lapse, which signals that I've probably got larger cognitive problems than dementia. But anyway, no, that was actually done on purpose to deliberately create a talking point to which we are now discussing.
For dramatic effect.
Dramatic effect.
Look,
dramatic, so dramatic.
Let's put it this way. You are as cognitively effective as the next president of the United States, Joe Biden.
Sleepy Joe. I'm definitely sleepy, so we're on the same page there.
But unfortunately, you are not president. So
no, definitely not. No,
not an American citizen. Otherwise, I don't know, third party. I could have. I see it. I could have seen it.
Yeah. Rum's independent. Libertarian.
You never know.
Get 1.2% of the vote, and throw the election results out.
Nice.
Speaking of the election, Trump isn't going as well as his legal challenges aren't they're not really going anywhere.
I love that the frame of the conversation. So Trump still lost the election. The frame of it every week is President Trump still refused to concede the election, even as Republican lawmakers insist that, Joe Biden's chances is most likely going to be the next president of the United States. They still can't bring themselves to say the thing. You lost, bro. You fucking lost because you're a loser. You lost, bro. It's it seems exceedingly, incredibly, very likely that Joe Biden will be the next president. It's I think it's safe to call it at this point.
It's an admission without an admission, and at the moment, the Pennsylvania court has rejected Trump's latest legal move. None of his legal challenges have succeeded. The court went so far as to say, well, it's all very well for you to just make an allegation, but you've got to have some evidence. It turns out to be able to actually have those carry through.
It's this weird thing where, in order to to have a case in court, you need some evidence. That's a part of it, apparently. Who knew? But
evidence. But yeah, look, I mean, the next step, if they really want to go there, is the Supreme Court. But it's unlikely. Even if that went to the Supreme Court, there's nothing there in front of them. Even the right-wing sociopaths would still have to vote the thing on its merits, right? In theory. One
would assume. The thing is, even if Pennsylvania, so this is about specifically this case that Trump is vowing to take to the Supreme Court is about Pennsylvania. Even if somehow Trump wins this case, it falls straight along ideological lines. Every conservative on the court is I'm a spineless amoeba piece of shit, and I will just vote party over any legal reasoning whatsoever because I'm just the worst. That still would only take, say that somehow overturns the results of the Pennsylvania election, which Biden won by, I want to say 120,000 votes. So
many votes.
378 to 459. So what is that? 80,000 votes, something like that. Tens of thousands of votes. Clearly won. Say that they toss that out. Pennsylvania is only worth 20 electoral votes, so it would still take Trump only up to 252 and Biden down to, 306 minus 20. It still gives, but in this scenario where all of the planets line up, all of the golden geese shit their eggs, Rudy Giuliani wasn't in fact masturbating to a 15-year-old girl, say all the planets do line up, you still lost. You still lose the election because you don't have 270 electoral votes. What are you doing at this point?
But they're also running out of time as well, right? So when's the certification step got to happen? That's coming up in a week or two. So,
a lot of these states have already certified. Georgia's already certified. I believe Pennsylvania has certified at this stage. I could be wrong about that. Yeah, so Georgia's certified, Michigan certified, all of these ones that you think, okay, well, if he manages to flip this one and that one, and he's standing on his left leg, and Nevada just bursts into flames. Like, even under the best case scenario, like, a lot of these states have been certified, unless these legal challenges are successful before the 8th of December, then it's done. Everything's certified. Everything's in. The process is complete. So you can keep kicking and screaming and squealing about the whole thing, but it doesn't matter. It's a done deal at this point. Like, democracy does not require your assent in order to happen. Like, you know.
It's just a long game to get Ivanka Trump in next election. So make as much noise as you can now. Get a head start on the next 4 years of opposition. You
really want to start screaming into the void as soon as possible. That's what we've learned here on the podcast over the last 10 years.
Long game's a good game.
Mm-hmm. The longest.
The longest of longs. And I don't know, do we have anything else we want to say about the US election? It's the same shit that we talk about every week now. It's kind of it's a moot point.
Trump did sit at a tiny desk this week. That was... Yes. Did you see the tiny desk?
I saw the tiny desk. I didn't sort of quite understand the tiny desk with tiny hands, tiny man. There's lots of tinies in the joke. I didn't laugh that much, but some people did.
I love the media's propensity to focus on the dumbest possible part of any crisis at any given time. They're like, this guy is a recalcitrant proto-fascist who's trying to subvert democracy. Look at him in his tiny desk. What a prick. It's like...
So if you play the man, not the ball, George, then you're bound to win.
Is that what it is? It's like I find like a Friendly Geordies did a video earlier this week that I was looking at where he was talking about the media as a magnifying glass. Like, what it does is it's all about what it focuses on and what it sort of puts into sharp relief against other things. And I feel like maybe this is the media's way of realizing that the ball game is really, as you say, playing the man, not the ball. It's really not about him losing as much as it is making him seem like the loser that he is. That's going to be the really effective thing in people's minds. Like, setting the narrative of Trump as a loser piece of shit is probably more important than him actually having lost the election. I don't know.
It's definitely a story to sell, and you know, if you can sell a story through clickbaity tiny hands hashtags, then tiny desk, tiny hands, then you know, you're going to get some more clicks and some more views on your ads and more income, and everyone's happy.
Yeah, they really need to get their hits in, because the Trump, Black Friday sale is the media sort of, making money off of Trump. That situation's going away quite precipitously, obviously.
It's going away. I don't know what's going to replace it. I don't understand what the media is going to focus on if Donald Trump isn't tweeting about firing his horse catcher, to use the John Mulaney.
The horse is loose in the hospital. Yes.
Yeah. To use his joke, I don't know what we do now. Like, do we talk about other stuff? Do we, look at actual news and human rights abuses? Do we make jokes about, I don't know, South American dictators again? Like, what do we do? I don't understand. In
an era of completely normal news, you mean just banal? I think the global pandemic and resulting economic crisis that will, trash the global economy for decades to come is probably worthy of some attention. I think we'll still find things. There'll still be terrible people. There'll still be Boris Johnson. There'll still be Bolsonaro. Don't worry, Adam. There'll still be pricks everywhere.
Let's pick another dictator to focus on everywhere.
Okay.
Bolsonaro is a good one. We'll come back to you about that, as dear listeners. We'll come back to you with the hottest takes of Brazilian political dogma.
It really does, like, we could bring a dictator a week. It's like a little show and tell. Okay? In case you're wondering, this is what's happening in Ecuador this week. Shit's still really fucked up there.
Shotgun Turkmenistan again.
Hey.
Pretty happy with him.
Guess what? El Salvador, still fucked up.
Venezuela?
Juarez in Mexico. That's all fucked up. It's still fucked up, you guys. Yeah, the world is not magically going to turn into like a Disney film just because Donald Trump is out of office. But you know what? It's a good fucking start. I'll take it. I will absolutely fucking take it at this stage.
I wouldn't mind doing that, actually. It's a good segment idea. Do like a broken... Do you think the US is broken? Here's another broken democracy. Alleged democracy. Democratic Republic of... definitely not democratic land.
People's Republic of... Today, this week's Dictator of the Week. And
I like that.
Yeah, why not?
Let's do it.
Sure.
But look, this week though, George, we do have something else to talk about. We do have another subject, something with the world economy, as you just pointed out. And look, it's big news here in Australia. Look, the Australian government, to put it plainly, and we've talked about this before on the show, there's a bit of this is a disagreement over some various things with the Chinese Communist Party at the moment.
That's a nice way of putting it. A very diplomatic way of just a bit of a rah-rah, bit of a hooroo.
They're our largest trading partner. We want relations to be strong with China. We're just having a little, just a little,
tiff,
screaming match.
A lover's squirrel. A lover's squirrel. A lover's quarrel. Grammar's important.
A screaming quarrel. That's what that is.
Just your mother and I are having a discussion. Okay. We're not
firm discussion.
We're not fighting. We're having a discussion. Okay.
And that discussion involves me throwing, you as Australia, calling out my poor human rights record and other political things that are happening. And me, instead of going, you know what, fair point, that seems to be happening, me just throwing tariffs on all your trade exports. Just tariff this, tariff that.
I take your
tariffs. It's tariffs. If you get a tariff, you get a tariff. You just don't even get to come into the country anymore. Coal, we're not doing any more coal. See ya.
What human rights record? You are. Shut up. That seems to be the level of the discourse at the moment. So this follows on from Old ScoMo, Scotty from Marketing, making some comments about having an independent inquiry into the origins of coronavirus, which China has mysteriously been, for some reason, unwelcoming to, and has since sort of spiraled out into an all-out trade war, leaving...
We're in a trade war now. It's not a light discussion. It's a full-on... I mean, we're not really doing much back to them, apart from, stop imprisoning Muslims in Xinjiang.
Hey, stop the gulags, maybe. And the China's like, fuck you! We're taking the Merlot! And what? They're like, Cole, you can suck on those lobsters, you piece of shit. And we're like, we really just want you to stop abusing human rights. Fuck you! Barley? That barley can suck my dick! All right, China. Kind of just hoping.
Have your iron ore. We definitely will take your iron ore.
The iron ore is still, that's nice. We'll have plenty of that. But,
take your pine plantation logs and you can go and, burn them.
You can get those trees and you can whittle them down to a fucking dildo that you can go fuck yourself with. Authorized by the Chinese government.
These are all this, So look, as
these
you
are
said, George,
paraphrasing, and they're not direct quotes. Paraphrasing. We're just giving you the vibe. We just want you to have Marbo, the vibe, etc. We just want you to understand tonally how the discussion is going, and it's going great.
It's going well.
It's going so good.
Yeah, so good, nailing it. Look, as you said, this whole thing started earlier in the year. It was actually Maurice Payne, I think, who made the comments. But anyway, the Australian government, and then, Scott Morrison jumped on the back end.
Oh, okay. Sort of back. Okay.
So basically, when the coronavirus first hit, and you could there's questions around why we did this. And this is perhaps, you might argue this was a bit of a political blunder by the Australian government.
No, that doesn't sound like us. No, surely not.
We're smooth operators, George.
That's how I would describe us, yeah.
Yeah. Not like a brick being thrown through a window.
Certainly not. We're definitely, the song Smooth Criminal? That's us.
Yeah.
But with diplomatic relations instead of murder.
We basically said we'd like to have an independent inquiry into the coronavirus. Mm-hmm. In perhaps, you could argue, and China saw that as basically pandering to the US. And really embarrassing, as you would. If the pandemic started, no one's disputing, I think, that the pandemic started in China, but we wanted an independent inquiry to verify, I don't know, how and when and all that kind of stuff. When you kick off a global pandemic, turns out people might have some questions.
Why did this
and
happen?
We didn't just say it. We actually followed through with it. So we got, I think it was like 100 and something other countries as a part of, from the UN or one of the UN subsidiaries who signed it. And we actually ended up forcing China by sort of peer pressure to sign the agreement in principle as well. Now, whether or not this inquiry has actually happened yet, I'm not sure.
Since when does that work? Since when does Australia call the shots about anything?
Exactly. We basically made China agree to this thing that they really didn't want to have
This
to
one
do.
time that we've had effective governance in our country and it's completely shot us in the foot. Since when? What?
We did it without the US's support, even though they kind of, I think they did piggyback off it. But we actually went to a lot of European countries who were like, yeah, okay, let's check this out. Anyway, so fast forward a couple of months, and it turns out the Chinese are still really angry about it, about that, and a bunch of other things. So there's always been also been accusations of like spying and all this other stuff as well, which is fed into the narrative. Which means over probably the course of the year, there's just been tariff and trade blockage and other stuff, one after the other, to the point now where most of our large exports are being sort of, impounded either in Chinese ports or being tariffed to Kingdom Come. Yeah,
it's not great, particularly the wine industry. The wine,
that's the latest one.
That's the latest one. So the allegation there is that I love that they didn't comment on our human rights abuses, as we discussed at length last week. China's like, no, we're good with that. But the wine, that really fucked me up, bro. So the allegation is that Australia is overly subsidizing our producers and basically dumping excess product on Chinese shores. Now, all of that is obviously horseshit because Australian wine is some of the best in the world, and Australian wine producers will tell you they don't get nearly enough in the way of subsidies.
No.
Agriculture does not get the kind of subsidies that they would like here in Australia, as they certainly do in other regions. France's agriculture is famously very subsidized. It's nowhere near those levels. So, and the reason
about the water credits from the Murray-Darling Basin, what do they mean by subsidized? What are they assuming? That the Australian, grape growers go out to their patch of dirt, which is barely able to bloody hold a bounty, and they plant a grape, plant, and then the Australian government turns around and goes, "Here's $5." Yeah, is that what they think?
Cheers, thanks, cunt. Oh no, I think they're basing their understanding off maybe those early 90s McCain's commercials where the kids are eating corn on the roof.
Yeah.
And it goes, Marge, the rains are here, and they think it's raining, but it's actually government subsidies watering the land instead.
Ah, right, okay, government subsidies. Yeah.
So needless to say that this wine isn't over subsidized. Our products are generally especially in regards to wine and produce and meat, are considered here in Australia, that shit is world class. And so the reason that Chinese consumers are buying this stuff from us here in Australia is because it's highly desirable. It's not that we're just this shit wine from the Barossa Valley that we're dumping in China so their local products can't compete. No, these are markets that have been developed in good faith over decades because we have a superior product and China has people that are willing to buy it and pay a premium for it. This is what they describe as dumping, you would just describe as trade.
Well, it's a $3 billion industry, and apparently 40% of exports are to China. So it's the largest market.
But the Chinese like good shit. If you've got a developing middle class and they've got money to spend and they want to spend it on luxury goods, wine is one of those things, and Australian wine is some of the best in the world. That's none of that is some government. This is the thing, is all of the things with this, the allegations that have come out of the Chinese embassy that were then forwarded onto the media. So that's how you know they're not trying to have a conversation in good faith. Is they go, here are our demands, the age. Okay, whatever, bro. The demands really betray to me a really fundamental misunderstanding about how how a free market works in Australia, because a lot of the demands that they make are for things that are outside of Australian government control as well. They're asking for things to be changed where it's actually the government doesn't okay, for example, an unfriendly, these are from the list of grievances.
14 public grievances.
14 public grievances that they forwarded to the media. One of them was an unfriendly or antagonistic report on China by media.
Well, I mean, Stan
by
Grant,
media, okay.
Stan Grant has his own entire show now, which is literally like, it's all about China, but it's not very flattening for the CCP. It's particularly...
Well, here's an idea. Stop doing human rights abuses and we'll stop reporting on them. Cheers. An unfriendly or antagonistic report on China by media, poisoning the atmosphere of bilateral relations. And I guess the implication is that, like, fucking shut your media up, bro. And we're like, the Australian government's like, we don't have anything to do with that because we're not a dictatorship. So... That's literally something we don't have control over. We live in a country where we don't jail our journalists or send them to gulags. So that's just something you're going to have to be okay with.
They, look, the other things they're upset about are Australia's public statements about Taiwan's status, Hong Kong's autonomy.
We're a democracy and we support democracy. Like, that is a completely uncontroversial thing that you should have already known about the Australian people. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, this is not... The same thing could be said about the US, which is China's largest trading partner. Big fans of democracy there when it works correctly. More or less 50% of the time, big fans of democracy, or at least one party is.
The other thing that they're upset about is a lot of the work being done by the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, which tends to focus a lot of its attention on China in terms of how we should deal with them and all this kind of stuff.
Okay,
which,
but one could say, given the recent trade war, probably justified from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, because as it turns out, they've become a massive fucking problem, haven't they? Which is exactly what they've been fucking telling us is, there are geopolitical strategic reasons why we should not become over-reliant on China as a trading partner in case they just want to start swinging their dick around in relation to the South China Sea, in relation to Huawei not being... imagine having the balls to be like... one of our grievances with you is that you won't let Huawei build your national 5G infrastructure. And that's fucked up because we want to, I guess, because of reasons. Don't ask me why. But it's well within Australia's rights to dictate who the fuck we want to build our national infrastructure. And it's got nothing to, these are just matters of internal Australian sovereignty. Like, you are not allowed as a foreigner to own a business in China. Do you know that?
Yeah, it makes sense.
It makes sense. But we don't have those rules. You can be a private citizen from anywhere and own a business in Australia, as long as you comply with relevant legislation, as long as you pay your taxes. No, in China, you need to own, as a foreign investor, you can not own more than 49% of a Chinese business. Yeah. You need to have local partners on the ground that own the majority of what's going on there. So to have a country with such a ludicrous, unfair restrictions turn around and say to us it's really unfair that you're not letting us build your national security 5G infrastructure. That's fucked up, bro. You should really be freer about all of that. It's kind of fucked up of you.
The changes are unfounded, George. There's no evidence to show that there's any link between Huawei and the Chinese Communists. There is.
Except common sense would indicate that any large-scale company in China is obviously in the pocket of the Chinese Communist Party. You don't get to be Huawei without doing what the fuck the party tells you to do. Yeah. When they say jump, you say how high. So
these are all the examples, right, of the things that Australia has effectively done that's pissed China off in the last sort of year and a half to 12 months. And so what they've done is, as we said at the start of the show, they've started launching tariffs. So they started off with barley, beef. At the moment, they're not importing any crayfish. They're not importing
20 tons of lobsters died in, I think it was at Shanghai airport because they weren't able to clear customs in time. Yeah. And they're doing these things deliberately. They're saying, there's bugs in this timber. There's cadmium in the crayfish. There's coming up with all of these bullshit excuses to fuck with us. It's except no, the reason you get all of this shit from us is because it's great. The quality is excellent.
It doesn't have cadmium.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty good.
We're the ones that don't have the cadmium. They're just projecting. They're doing what Donald Trump does where they're racist dictator piece of shit. And it's no, that's you, bro. That's the thing that you're doing. They're like, yeah, and the gulags, and you guys are putting Uyghur Muslims in camps of 1 million people. It's like, no, you're the one doing that, bro. That's not us.
We do have people in camps, to be fair.
But far fewer people. That's a distinction I'd hoped I'd never have to draw on this podcast. Our concentration camps are much smaller than yours. So morally superior, obviously.
In the timber industry has been flawed out. There's where is it? Sort of Victorian, South Australian border region. They've got lots and lots of plantations, and at the moment there are like just rows and rows and rows of like logs just lined up along the port that aren't going anywhere because no ships are able to dock because there's no point. You can't take it anywhere. Apparently,
there's like maritime trade vessels with coal and stuff that have just been like sitting outside of Chinese ports for months at this point. Like
and people that like, can't I want to go home.
Yeah,
like, I don't want to sit on this ship anymore, bro.
Turns out, not a big fan of babysitting coal in the South China Sea. Like, it's not my favorite thing to do this time of year. I'd rather be anywhere else.
And of course, there are things that are probably changing in China which will affect that. But like under normal circumstances, you would turn around and perhaps say, look, we're going to start lowering how much coal we need. But look, the fact is that's not even what's happening. They're actually getting their coal from other places and just leaving ours out on shore. So yeah, these poor guys sitting on these ships have been sitting there for months and months and months.
Boy, do I have some news for you guys when you get back. There's this thing called coronavirus, and it's not swell.
And the other ridiculous thing is we're meant to have a free trade agreement with China.
Oh yeah,
we've had one there since like 2015.
Yeah, it's going.
So all of these things.
It's going great. Why do you ask?
Like, it's silly. And it's not like they haven't, like some of these things have been outright blocked, but the wine one's really interesting because it's just, we'll still have your wine. We'll just chuck a 200% tariff on it. Yeah. Which makes it, obviously double your price.
It's so funny though. It's so obvious that the Chinese government is clearly corrupt because there was an example that they used where they said like this guy who had a like ambassador, what was that? Like this particular company that had an ambassador to China, like their tariff is only 100%, but this other, these other companies like 200%. So it's like, oh, even in tariffs, they're still playing like
favorites,
funky bullshit favorites with,
And look, I mean, this is the thing that this situation we're in is what white paper after white paper and other strategic things that, have been coming out of the Australian government since 2010, or when Kevin Rudd was in power. These things have been coming out saying we're going to have to be very careful about how we position ourselves between our largest trading partner and our largest defense ally, the United States. And if you fuck the equation either way, you're going to have consequences. And so this is really just, I guess a lot of the questions have been around sort of like, well, when's it going to go bad, right? Like China's, it's growing and it's becoming more aggressive with some of its political maneuvers. Like, when's the tipping point where we start to feel the effects? And it's been this year.
Yeah.
So the other thing is like,
you know what it reminds me of, actually, Adam. Sorry to interrupt. It's something you said, I don't know, a couple of months ago, where we were talking about like, what are the long-term effects of coronavirus going to be? And you said something very wise. You're like, well, it's all about like instability, right? It's not about like a conflict necessarily erupting straight off the bat, but like something like coronavirus will destabilize things. And when things are destabilized, that's when shit gets fucked up. And you have these other like second, third order consequences of things happening as a result. And I think because things have been so shook up globally, economically, because of coronavirus, it's provided like a really fertile sort of stomping ground for something like a trade war to start when like in regular times, I don't think anything like this would have even wouldn't have been on the radar. Both sides would have been like, it's not profitable for us to do this. So let's just
it wouldn't make
not.
Sense. But as things get more, I'm not sure if you can still see me because I've just closed the blinds. But
no, you look good.
As things become destabilized, the more risk there is of any particular action being, and the reaction to that being escalated or read incorrectly. And this is the thing where you could probably turn around and go, is Morrison and the federal government really the most politically deft operators when it comes to this sort of thing.
No.
Is this very deliberate, or have we just made a mistake?
No, it seems to me like it's clearly been a blunder, but it was a blunder that was bound to happen, right? Like I think on a long enough timeline, we would have come to loggerheads with China. And as you say, places like the Australian Strategic Policy Institute have been warning about exactly this for a long time. Ever since I read that book on the South China Sea, I have been concerned about exactly this. Australia walking a really weird tightrope between China and the US. And there's going to come a point where Australia's going to have to choose. And it seems like, you know, given the new Australia signed a new defense pact with Japan just recently, you know, obviously they're looking for bilateral trade agreements abroad. I don't know what they can really slap together right now. But, you know, the Australian government seems to be, certainly this government, a conservative, you know, Liberal Party government, seems to be very much making the play more in favour of the West rather than China. And I have to say, I'm not that upset about it. Like, yes, China's a valuable trading partner. Yes, they might fuck our wine industry. Like, yes.
Wine industry, though. It's a whole raft of things. There are people that,
I understand,
fishermen that aren't able to go out to sea because you know, there's no point catching any crayfish.
Yeah, you know,
if China want to really turn the screws, they can turn the taps off to us in an instant.
And this is the whole point. This is exactly why they're doing this. Is them turning around and saying to us, "You need us more than we need you." And the problem is that's always going to be the case. There is no scenario where the Australian economy, you know, quintuples in size every 2 years over the next 20 years to become larger than the Chinese economy. And then they need us more than we need them, right? That's never going to happen. So we need to think from a strategic point of view. We need to trade with and have agreements with other countries that we know will act in good faith. And that is the US, that is Japan, that is people who agree to a rules-based order. Yeah. You can't, this is everything I've ever thought about the Chinese is coming true, where it's like the Chinese Communist Party at the head of this government, they cannot be trusted because at any point they might equals right to them, you know, and they will do whatever it takes. They are building islands right now in the South China Sea.
They've built them already.
They're building them, whatever. They have built islands for this like explicit purpose of like stealing territory from neighbors around them. Like these people who should be their trading partners, they are like more or less declaring active hostilities against in order to steal land, which may or may not even have shit underneath it. So, but yeah, also trade routes and other things that are relevant for the South China Sea.
Well, yeah,
they can't be trusted. It's not like we're dealing with New Zealand. You know, it's not where it's like, oh yeah, it's chill, bro. We'll send you some workers' brew and you can send us some fish and chops. Like, it's not the same thing. We are not dealing with other partners in good faith because, as we can see, if they don't like how our fucking media reports about the true human rights abuses that they do, they'll take it out on us. And so what's the alternative? We have to stay silent about all this shit? Well, like, fuck that.
I think the Australian government's had a very deliberate play to put the screws on politically, but they haven't properly thought through the economic consequences.
Where's it going to end?
Doing that. Like, they probably should have, we've got to develop new trading partners. Okay, maybe we should have done that first.
You should have done that 20 years ago.
Yeah. But the other thing as well is that you've got to imagine and got to remember that culturally speaking, upsetting certain governments and the cultures that they come from has a different impact than me calling you a fuckwit right now. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're losing face is something that is really not cool in a lot of cultures.
Okay,
right?
but like,
that's not of saving face, right? So, you know, we've got to be very careful about what we interpret as just like a little like kick in the shin. They may interpret that as like you've just destroyed my honor or whatever it may be. And I'm not saying it specifically to China, but other countries as well.
But if you can't operate in good faith, like if you can't have a situation where other people's media environments can talk about you however they like. If you're so thin-skinned and egotistical and arrogant as to try and control, not just control how other countries interact with you, which I think every country could agree. There's like, you have a certain purview over like how people trade with you, over how you interact with people. You don't have control. You don't have any purview as to what other people in other countries fucking say about you. You just don't. Like, and I'm sorry if you feel as though that's the case, but like, then you need to get your fucking head checked. Like,
if you wanted people to give you the best, if you wanted foreign journalists to provide the best possible, feedback, if you will, on what's going on in your country, kicking them out and closing the door.
Yeah.
There are no more Australian journalists based in China now, I believe. I think the last one's left a couple of months ago.
They got kicked out.
Yeah. If you, we pulled them out because they were in danger of being arrested.
Okay. You say potato, I say potato.
One would think that you probably want foreign journalists to be there to scrutinise you, to be able to say with honesty, everything's okay, bro.
But that's not about that. This is communism. Yeah, one of the commentators from I think it was from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, said something like the operating theory from China has been take our money and shut up. We in the West thought that trading with China, developing a relationship economically would change them. If we have a trade relationship, that'll make them more democratic. That would make them more accepting to Western ideals. All of a sudden people are going to show up with blue jeans and start waving American flags and, and that's not what happened. What happened is we made another country very rich that holds deeply undemocratic ideals and seeks now to use that wealth to try and push them and their influence and that ideology abroad. And that's what you're seeing with the Belt and Road Initiative, which is basically China handing out money left and right, saying, hey, let's build all this infrastructure. Let's have it all flowing to and from China so we can maximize our trade, our profits, our influence in the regions. And you know what? If you can't pay us back, don't worry. Just let us own a bit of
the port,
your shit, and have complete control over a global, trade fucking ecosystem. Like, they are not people that are operating in good faith. It is a country that is based on power and influence, and they don't care sometimes if they just have to take stuff. And that is an ideology which is incompatible with like Western rules-based democratic order. Yeah.
And look, I also just want to clarify as well. I mean, we're not saying necessarily that, like, I know a lot of Chinese people, and they're lovely, and they're probably more reasonable than a lot of my Australian, associates and other people that I know, friends.
Who are you talking about? Are you talking about me or?
No. No. And look, the distinction here is that it's the government, not necessarily the people.
Yes.
that are the problem. I think honestly, like most, people from Chinese descent or Chinese people that I know, dual citizens or students that have been here or whatever, that they enjoy, when they come to Australia, they enjoy the freedoms that are here and they appreciate them, and they're not saying that, they've got no ideological opposition to it. But certainly the government in China is very different.
And I want to be like, I do want to be respectful of other people's cultures and the way they see things. And like, I do think that it behooves you as someone who's as a country who's engaged in diplomacy and trade with other countries to consider other people's cultural dispositions and where they come from. And you factor that into the calculus as to how you go about dealing with them, right? That makes sense. But there are some ideologies, and I think this is a direct result of their sort of communist leanings that are just incompatible with Western democracy. There are things that I hold so dear, me personally, like freedom of the media, freedom of people to say whatever they want about whomever they want to. There are certain ideals that I have about Western democracy having a rules-based order, which are so close to my heart that if you violate those, we just can't deal with you anymore. You're not part of, no matter how much money you have, you're not a rational actor anymore. And you could pull the rug out from under us at any time. Now you have to keep trading with them from like an economic standpoint. We can't just say we're not trading with China anymore because that would be ruinous. But I think plans need to be made, and they should have been made many years ago, to basically make them an insignificant part of our trading relationship. We'll trade with them as long as they allow them.
We're so intertwined now. It's such a large market. You can't just pull out. Like, it would take 50 years to develop,
maybe it's our own fault. Maybe we've been selfish and we've been greedy and we wanted to line our pockets because the market was there and we could sell them our stuff and we could dig stuff out of the ground and send it to them.
After the GFC, like, what other alternative did we have? It was about getting as much iron ore and God knows what else out to markets like China.
But it's a deal with the devil.
As soon as we could.
This is the thing. It's like you can't, because of this like deep-seated ideology that they have about communism. It's a Faustian pact. It's going to bite you in the bum at some point, and that's exactly what's happened to us. We should have been developing other markets the whole time, knowing that China would pull the rug out from under us at some point, which is exactly what they've done. So
we've got other markets, but it's the size of the Chinese market that's the problem. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's so many consumers there that you can't just go to like what's an example, like Thailand and just be like, it's not going to replace it. Do you know what I mean? You have to. It's going to be something that we'll have to develop over many, many years. And look, to be fair, there are lots of work that Australia has been doing within the Indo-Pacific region to try and strengthen those trade relationships. And I think there was an agreement signed last month or something like that. But it's something that we're either going to have to accept the fact that farmers and local producers are going to potentially go out of business, or we have to sacrifice our ideals.
We need to subsidize them to some degree. We need to help them out because, maybe we need to do exactly what China's accusing us of doing and having a bit of protectionism and subsidizing our own producers. It's not as though I really resent that allegation that Australia is dumping wine. Like, as though that, our fucking Xinjiang that Xinjiang Merlot that everyone loves can't compete because of this Barossa Valley crap that they're just wafting in.
Churning out.
Oh, Clare Valley Riesling. Ugh, disgusting. Who cares? Whatever. Well, our Wuhan fucking Malbec is way better anyways. Like, I don't know. It's so offensive, especially considering that China specifically has a history of dumping in other economies. You know what I mean? Like, it's so hypocritical.
You were saying before the show that there's steel exports.
So this
steel manufacturing is effectively subsidized, right?
Yeah, and many areas, because you've got that really tight intertwining of government and
business
and the economy there. Like, yeah, of course, there's a bunch, and they also manipulate their currency and all these other things, which I know less about. But like this analysis from the conversation in 2017. Now, I don't know if they're still doing this, but this was true at the time, and I remembered it. It was the first thing that I remembered when we were initially discussing this, as a fact check, is China dumping steel? And there's a lot of graphs and, analysis and very smart things. But if you scroll down to the bottom where it says verdict, the answer is yes. Like, the Chinese steel industry is operating at artificially depressed cost levels, which equates to dumping. If you are working in a way which allows you to have a cost advantage over other producers globally because of help that you are getting from the government, that equates to an unfair competitive advantage. So for China to turn around and say, you're dumping all of this delicious wine on our shores and it's unfair, is like hilarious and like the height of fucking hypocrisy, because they do this shit all the time to other producers.
But a lot of it's like, I don't think when China say this stuff, they expect people to turn around and believe it. I think it's probably more just perhaps for their own people and media to, if they're going to make a decision to at least have some reasoning behind it. So local, media outlets can report on it at least, or at least local businesses can understand what's going on.
They need their propaganda for optics purposes.
Yeah. But I don't know. I'm just really concerned that if we keep pushing, same thing with the US. The US has been in a tit-for-tat trade war but they've got the ammunition where they can turn around and go, we're going to tariff this, we're going to tariff that. Like there's enough of an economy in the US to be able to push back against whatever China lays on them. Whereas
it's not
we just keep getting punched in the face.
It's not a trade war if you lose every battle. It's not a fight if you're the one just getting punched in the head repeatedly.
I guess the question, you've come out quite clearly and sort of, made your point about sort of rule-based order and what you prefer. But I'm just wondering, like, I don't know whether I'm willing personally to say, fuck, the Mount Gambier, where was it? I've lost the bloody thing now. But fuck local producers because I care about democracy. And
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying like it is evidence to the fact that they can't be trusted, right? So we'll keep trading whatever they let us. But what I'm saying is don't count on them because they will not be there for you because they don't subscribe to the same set of ideas that we do. And so I just think it's not smart to count on them in the long term. And I think to resist, to acquiesce on any of these fronts is like really fundamentally against what we believe as a Western democracy. So I think it's really dangerous. Last thing I want is like, creeping communist ideology here in Australia. Like that's because we have to go along with them because they're the big swinging dick. Like I don't love that. I don't love any of that. Like
I don't think that's necessarily what we're saying. I think what China want are for people to turn around and look at them as a model society rather than
start being a model society rather than a bunch of pricks. There's a real easy way to get what you want, and it's by being a good global citizen.
It's so hard, George, though. Like, with wish.com, like I really want this $2 Donald Trump
signet
memorabilia ring.
Yeah, I saw that
on Wish the other day. $2.
It's a good deal.
Shipping, to be fair. Good deal.
Genuine silver.
And, you can buy other stuff, like just all the stuff you can get from wish.com. Like, it's not worth it. I really need my underpriced stuff that you get from Wish. I don't know how to do a whole lot of online shopping. So I did see that, though. I was like, what the fuck is the algorithm throwing this at me for?
You know what it is?
It's literally a memorabilia ring or whatever you want to call it. For $2, which has Donald Trump's face on it.
Perfect.
And he's the 45th president, and it's engraved with "Make America Great Again."
45th and final president of the United States.
Exactly. Next after this, it'll be the divided states. So,
good one.
Anyway, so that's all we wanted to say about China. That's
fine. I'm all right. I just had to get it off my chest.
I just think we should stop pissing him off. I think we should acquiesce.
Sure. No, I think
I've pursued peace in our time, George. Peace in our time.
As Neville Chamberlain said, it's always best to appease. And that's a strategy that works 100% of the time.
Every time.
I am aware that there are areas like with tourism in Australia. I read recently, this is something I'm aware of because I used to work in accommodation, that like there are areas where we are like net exporters and tourism dollars is one of them. We definitely send many more billions of dollars overseas every year in normal years, not in coronavirus years where everyone's stuck in their second bedroom doing, podcasts. But in regular years, Australia spends way more money overseas than it does obviously domestically and more than what we get from foreign travelers coming here to Australia. So I wonder if we if we convinced people here in Australia to travel domestically and spend those dollars locally, I wonder what we could achieve. And I'm sure that there's markets as well. It's like we are a really wealthy nation. We're not a nation with, billions of people, but we are a nation where the per capita wealth is higher than the vast majority of other countries in the world. If we spent some of those dollars here at home rather than sending them abroad, I think we could make a really big difference. But there needs to be a coordinated strategy and policy to help make that happen. Like with tourism, the Victorian government right now is encouraging people to go visit rural Victoria by giving them $200 vouchers if they can prove that they've spent X amount of dollars in rural Victoria and things like that. It's like there are I feel like there could be initiatives like that could really help us get some of these industries going again in the absence of a massive foreign export market.
But I really want a 216-piece wrench set from
for $3.
Yeah, I really want it.
And that's the problem, is like we've always gravitated to the lowest price. I remember during the 90s growing up here in Australia, there was a really big push to like buy Australian. I'm Big Kevin, I'm excited. I'm going to buy fucking Australian products from fucking Australia. Yeah, this detergent's $17, but it's from fucking Australia. Don't you want to buy fucking Australian? And it was like, that's just very much disappeared in the last 20 years. You don't really see people talking like that anymore. And maybe it's like some of that was slightly jingoistic and sort of vaguely racist, but like, I think the sentiment of like buying stuff in the Australian economy that helps Australian jobs, that we Australian consumers actually want and need, that makes sense rather than getting undercut by cheap Chinese stuff from overseas where possible.
Australian consumers really want the 200-piece 80-color texture set for $10.50.
I feel like you're just telling me things that are showing up on your wish.com.
Yeah, totally doing that.
I feel like you're just telling me your wish list now.
Yeah, if you got any Christmas present, if you want to buy me one. But yeah, what do you want for your wedding, by the way? Do you want some cash, or do you want like a sweet vase?
It's probably a conversation that we could have offline, not like a vase. Offline. I don't want a vase.
No vases. I could buy it off wish.com.
I would absolutely prefer you did not do that. On that note, we have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. If we go missing like so many bookkeepers in the middle of the night, you know who to blame. Make sure you follow bookkeepers, book sellers in China. That was the reference I was making there. Make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that have, do, or ever will exist at Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and motherfucking TikTok. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Twitter at George Tsipos.
You can follow me on Instagram at AC Dream.
And you can follow Tom on Twitter at Tom DeHeath. You might have noticed that he wasn't here, and we probably should have mentioned that earlier. Thanks for listening, guys. Love your faces, and we'll see you next week.
Tom will be back next week as well.
He's fine. He's totally. He's okay.
He's okay. We got to bury the body though before we. Yep. There's a nice spoon here. It says, "You are my sunshine." Would you like that?